As a keen astrophotographer, I must have spent a fair amount of time complaining about the moon, that it's up and it's bright and it's washing out all the faint astronomical objects that I normally like to image. However, because the nights that it's possible to image are fairly few and far between here in the UK, particularly this time of year in late winter, because we've got so much cloud and we've had floods and torrential rain the last couple of months, that every night that's clear I think we should take advantage of. So my New Year's resolution is to learn to love the moon, and I'm going to try and image it. So let's see how we get on over the next few weeks and see if the weather is going to allow me to complete my New Year's resolution. This evening the moon's at about 15% waxing, so this is my first attempt to capture it using my CDS Pro on my APM 107-700 refractor. I don't have a webcam capable of recording video, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my modified CDS Pro 2, which is a Canon 600D, and I'm going to take individual still shots and let's see how we get on. So this is the first attempt at my 15% waxing moon. And it's quite a clear sky. It's the first clear night we've had for quite a long time. Even though we've had sleet and heavy rain during the first part of the day, it's now down to about 3 degrees, and so I'm attempting my capture. If I used a webcam, I'd be able to take like a movie, and then I'd be able to use something like AutoStacker to select the best frames. I'm having to work with what I've got, and actually, as it would be, the moon's sinking very, very fast behind me over the hill and the tree, and I'm not going to have a chance to do many shots before it's out of sight. But this is the first images that I've got this evening. Let's hope tomorrow I get another go and the weather isn't too bad. You can see the sort of settings that I've been using this evening. I'm using backyard EOS with my CDS Pro. I've been taking exposures of 2500 at an ISO of 100. Even though it's first crescent, it was actually rather bright. You can see some of the images I'm getting straight off the camera. Actually not too bad really. If I'd had a bit more time I would have been a bit more careful with the focusing, but the moon was sinking very fast behind the roof of the observatory. And since the purpose of this is to learn to love the moon, let's try and identify a few features. So we can see that there are 2 mare here, which you can put on, and also 1 crater. So I think that'll do for my 15% start. I've got another clear night. After torrential rain all day, it's actually cleared. You can see the moon up behind me. It's 29% illumination, still waxing, so I'm going to try and image it again this evening. Because it's a bit brighter than it was the other night, I'm actually going to put a neutral density filter into the optical train of the scope to try and cut down a bit of that brightness, because it was a bit overwhelming even at 15% a couple of nights ago. Here we go, I'm going to put the neutral density filter on now. Take out the light pollution filter. I don't think the seeing's actually the best this evening because it's very damp after all that rain today. But having said that, it doesn't look too bad. It's actually quite bright and clear. Taking out the light pollution, putting in neutral density. Fits in nice and easily in the CDS Pro. It's got this removable filter tray which I really like. Now to frame and focus on the moon and see what we get to. I've taken a bit more time over my focus this evening using the electronic focuser in live view using backyard EOS, and now I'm going to run a series of single frames. You can see this evening I'm using 1/32,000th of a second at 100 ISO, and I've also got that neutral density filter in. So these are looking quite nice. I don't think I'll be able to get the moon for much longer because it's about to go behind a different tree this evening of the neighbours. It really is quite fascinating imaging the moon. It's about 29% this evening, and there's some new features coming into view. I can see the seas, the Maori, becoming much more visible, and when I get the images back inside and compare them with my moon globe, I'm going to start labelling up some more features on the moon. So it really is a good way of learning and getting to know the moon. So I can do my imaging out here. It is actually pretty chilly. It's down to about 5 degrees, but it's very, very, very damp, and that cold is just seeping into my body. Even though it's fairly early in the evening, I guess I should have put my thermals on. Serves me right, but I don't expect to be out here very long because I know the window for imaging is quite short tonight because there's a lot of cloud coming in and I think it's going to rain a bit later tonight. So I'm just going to take one more run and I'm going to take some slightly longer exposures, then I'm going to pack down for the evening. For a bit of a change this evening, I'm imaging in daylight purely because it's forecast to come in cloudy and rain in about an hour's time, so I'm going to try and get my shots in before it gets dark and before the clouds come in. The moon tonight is 39%, so it varies about 10% per evening. It's not exact, it just depends on the phase. Even with a neutral density filter, an exposure of 1/4000th of a second and 100 ISO, which is the slowest this camera will go, I think it's still a little bit bright. However, it's nice and clear now, and if it gets a bit darker, perhaps my results will improve too. You can probably hear my camera clicking away in the background. Well, it's slowly getting darker, and as you can see, it's a beautiful clear sky above us, and the moon's starting to stand out in more and more detail, and it's much higher in the sky tonight than it's been on the previous couple of occasions when I've imaged, so it's well clear of the trees and the edge of my observatory at least for the next 40 minutes, so I'm hoping to capture some really good images. I've set the time lapse on the camera for every 3 minutes, so we should progressively get some darker shots until the cloud comes in, if that's what's going to happen. They can see the moon at 39%, and you can see my skyline. You can see the two trees that are lower down, which have been blocking my views on the previous evenings, and just the corner of the observatory. So I should get at least a good 45 minutes before it goes into the tree. I tried to image this afternoon while the sky was clear, but it came over quite cloudy, and then while the observatory was open we had a quick shower of rain, so I had to very quickly close the observatory up. But it's now clear, so I'm managing to get an extra night in at 41% illumination of the moon. So let's have a look at what I've captured this evening. I've had a gap of a few days because we've had absolutely torrential rain. The local river has burst its banks and flooded the water meadows, and tonight reasonably clear, as you can see from the moon behind me, but there's still quite a lot of moisture in the air and fleeting clouds coming across, but good enough for our purposes of imaging the moon. We're now up to about 87%, so we're getting very close to full illumination, and we've got a waxing gibbous moon. I'm looking forward to getting the images off the camera and just seeing what features we can pick out. It's definitely less interesting once it gets fuller because the full plane of the moon's illuminated, although I did notice that there's some very nice craters on the bottom of the moon and on the rim where the shadow still plays around. After a day of showers, fleeting sunshine and lots of cloud, it's actually cleared up and it's very nice this evening. I wouldn't normally be imaging when the moon's so full, but because the moon is now my target, I'm out tonight and I'm taking images with my scope. Tonight we've got 98% illumination. I don't know how many more nights I'm going to get that are going to be clear this week, but I think I've achieved my objective in terms of imaging the moon on subsequent nights and identifying some of the features on it. It's made me a much keener moon observer, and while I'm still a real beginner as far as the moon's concerned, I've learned lots about the moon just by looking on my globe and identifying the features that I've seen on my images. So the key message is to big it up for the moon. It's one of the key interesting things in the night sky, and just because the moon's there doesn't mean that you can't do astronomy. The moon's a very interesting object. If you start to study it, it's got lots of features and lots of things to see in every moon cycle. I'm certainly going to follow up and try and find some detail over subsequent cycles. Even taken with the
fastest setting on the camera, which is 1/4000th of a second, and at ISO 100, this shot's completely blown out. I'm also using a neutral density filter. So thank goodness for some of the clouds that came over and managed to attenuate some of the light. This one's much more evenly exposed. I'm going to have to check out that neutral density filter that I've got on the scope.
Well, tonight it's a supermoon, but as you can probably hear from the rain on the observatory roof, there's no observing tonight, unfortunately, so I think I'm going to have to stick with the 98% illumination that we got last night. There was one thing I was going to check, because last night I did struggle to take an image of the 98% moon. It was just too bright, and I only got away with one image because of the clouds over the moon. So I'm using a Baader ND filter, and just looking at this one here, it's 12.5%. So I'll need to buy another neutral density filter, which gives me a little bit more opacity and will enable me to image at close to and at full moon. So that's now on the shopping list. I hope you've enjoyed my adventures in learning to love the moon. I'm aware that these are not the best astro images of the moon that's ever been taken, probably because I'm not using quite the right equipment, but the purpose of the task was to try and identify some features on the lunar surface, which I've certainly done, and I had a lot of fun doing it and researching what those features were. But I'm going to pursue this, and I'm going to start looking for more features on the moon, and I think I have learnt to love the moon. Wishing you clear skies, and if you've enjoyed this vlog, please subscribe and leave a like.